Today I want to clear the air on something very important because I see a lot of videos on YouTube coming out and basically celebrating the fact that home prices hit an all-time high, the median home price in the United States. And there's a big mystery here of if home sales are so slow, Michael, and so many places are seeing home values drop, then why are home prices at an all-time high? I'm sure this is something a lot of people are wondering, and I want to give you the facts and help you understand why this is and why things aren't what they appear to be. Now, according to the National Association of Realtors, home prices hit $435,300 in June of 2025. And at the very same time, they reported a 2.7% decline in home sales for the very same month. Now, actually, these two factors are related a lot more than you might initially think. Because of the fact that not very many people are buying homes, the homes that are being purchased are on the higher price spectrum. And that's because people who are buying homes right now have the money to buy homes. They're likely already a homeowner. Maybe they've sold a house and came into a big windfall from the sale of their previous home and are able to pay cash for a new house, or maybe even put down a very large down payment and keep their payment low even in this environment. This has nothing to do with wages going up. This has nothing to do with this being the best housing market ever or this being the best time ever to buy. This is simply wealth perpetuating wealth. And the proof is in the data, okay? Because the strongest part of the market is in the high end. Homes above $1 million saw the biggest sales spike last month, rising 14% year over year. And when you see that big of a spike in 1 year in the $1 million plus category, no wonder it's going to raise the median sale price, guys. So this is very deceiving data. But a lot of real estate agents and a lot of people who are bullish on the economy and want you to believe that things are okay report on this and make these videos talking about how home prices just hit a new record high, as if that's something that is a reflection of how good things are going in this country. But it's not. It's a reflection of how good things are going for the top 10%. Believe me, that's it. And I don't think I really have to convince many of you out there that this is the case, because most people know this just by checking your bank account, checking your retirement account, checking your monthly budget, and seeing how far your dollars go these days and how much you have left over at the end of each month. I don't need to convince people that it's hard out there. And there's a lot of people out there that can actually afford these $1 million plus homes, and more homes are reaching the over $1 million threshold. Even all cash buyers made up 29% of all transactions in June of 2025, which goes to show you that 1/3 of the people who are buying are so rich that they can just afford to pay cash, even at the $1 million plus price point. But that is not the situation for people who are first-time home buyers or middle-income buyers. It's the complete opposite market for everybody else who's underneath that category. First-time home buyers only represented about 30% of all transactions in June of 2025, which is something I covered already. And it's a big warning sign that most people cannot get on the property ladder, especially younger folks right now. And if people who are setting these price points, in the higher end, think that these price points are just going to last forever because they're paying these prices for these homes right now, probably are going to find out the hard way in the future that one day when they need to sell that house in 15 or 20 years from now, it's going to be very difficult to find someone who can actually afford to pay the inflated price that they want for that house, because most people aren't going to have the cash. So who's going to come in and buy? Another big myth and lie that's being perpetuated is that these mortgage rates at 6.75% are a big deterrent for would-be buyers, and if those rates would just come down, everything would explode. In fact, even billionaires don't get it, which I'll go over a little side story on that in a little bit. You almost never see a story about real estate where they tell you that home prices are the problem. They always bring up interest rates and say that if interest rates were to drop to the floor, even Donald Trump wants interest rates to drop down to 1%. He wants the Fed to lower interest rates down to 1%. And he thinks if that happens, then somehow the housing market's going to have this miraculous recovery. I would be willing to bet there will be an initial bump in home sales, but it is not going to be the miraculous recovery that him and a lot of other people think it's going to be. You'll probably see sales higher for 6 months or maybe a year until it fizzles out, and everybody who might have been able to capitalize on that did, and everybody else who's been waiting on the sidelines just still can't because it's still too expensive. Because it's not like owning a home just comes down to the interest rate. In fact, that's the thing that probably matters the least. The price is the only thing you can't change after you purchase. That's permanent. You still have property taxes, and the more you pay for the house, higher your property taxes are going to be. Also, the higher your homeowner's insurance is going to be. And they keep talking about how if interest rates were to drop, that it would make home prices go up even further. But that's also temporary. It might do that. Yes, that is possible, but it's only going to be temporary because affordability is pretty much at an all-time low. And if prices were to go higher than they are right now, affordability will continue to get worse, which means buyer demand will just continue dropping into the future. And like I said, it all leads to the same place in the end. Who is going to be there to buy your house when no buyers are left that can afford it? Also, let's be realistic here and factual and admit that home prices are not up everywhere, because they're not. In fact, prices fell in 30 out of the 50 largest metros that the National Association of Realtors keeps track of. So more than half of the major metros across the country are seeing price declines at the same time that median home price just hit an all-time high, guys. It's definitely an anomaly. It's definitely an unusual situation, but it just goes to show you that anything's possible. And you need to really read between the lines to understand what's going on in order for you to make an informed decision out there right now. In fact, we're at a situation where even brand new home prices are becoming cheaper than existing home prices. You can get a brand new house right now for equal or lesser value of an existing home that's been lived in and used for decades. Take a look at this. The median sale price of a brand new single family house in June was $401,800, which is almost $40,000 less than the median existing sale price of a home. That's crazy. That makes zero sense. We've never seen this happen before, ever. Now, home builders are building smaller houses to meet buyer demand, because that's what a lot of first-time home buyers want. And the other thing is, existing homes often have one big advantage over brand new houses, which is their location. Oftentimes, existing homes are located in a much more favorable neighborhood, have a lot more amenities, maybe walking distance to things that you don't have when you buy in a brand new development. And also, 38% of home builders have been cutting prices as of July of 2025, and they're in the business of selling homes. So they're not interested in trying to keep up phony sales prices. They're interested in making sure their companies survive and their shareholders are happy. Here's a good example right here of a house for sale that has to start getting a grip on reality, because they listed this house for sale back in June for about $2.3 million and have now reduced the price 2 times, about $200,000. The last price cut was about $100,000, and the house still isn't sold. We're having an open house right now. I'm not going to go in, but it just goes to show you that these houses need to have big price cuts in order to get sold. Now, I realize that they bought this house back in 2020 for $1.155 million, but we don't know the condition of it. It looks like it's almost brand new, like they renovated basically everything. And I'm sure that costs a pretty penny up here in Corte Madera, California. And by the time they actually lower the price to the point where someone's actually willing to buy it, and they pay the real estate agent and they pay the transfer taxes and everything else that needs to be done, the profits aren't going to be as big as people would hope. I'm sure they're still going to come out ahead in this situation. But you got to think, 2 years ago, this house probably would have sold for $2.5 million, and they listed at 2.3. There probably would have been a bidding war. They would have bid up the price, and somebody would have overpaid for the house by 200 grand. Now they're having to lower the price by 200 grand and still not able to sell it. That is a massive difference in the markets that we're in right now. But back to what I was saying earlier about even billionaires don't get it, okay? The billionaire Jeff Green, he's a big real estate guy, and he says that prices are likely to soar once we see rate cuts. He says if rates come down, we'll have a huge boom in housing prices, and you're going to see all of the pent-up demand from buyers and sellers who've been holding out for lower financing costs. Well, like I said a little bit ago, we are likely to see a little bit of that until the people who actually have the cash to go out and buy dry up. But think about it, inventory is already back to pre-pandemic levels, and if this brings a lot more sellers to market, then they're going to flood the market with inventory, which also helps home prices come down. And also, the thing that these billionaires don't seem to understand, which I'm surprised some guy with no college degree who walks around the streets on YouTube can get this better than these guys can, is that they're all banking on the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates as if that's going to be the way we're going to get to 3% interest rates again to buy a home. But the reality is, if the Federal Reserve starts lowering interest rates when inflation is still a major problem like it is right now, likely the opposite's going to happen. We're probably going to see mortgage rates go up because mortgage rates have been going up since September of 2024 once the Fed started their interest rate cutting campaign. And that's because all of the people who buy US Treasuries are not convinced that inflation is at a level that's acceptable. So they want a higher return on investment in exchange for their money to buy Treasury bills. So how do these bigwig rich guys think that the Fed lowering interest rates is going to bring us to a situation where mortgages go down back to 3 or 4% again? I don't see the logic anywhere in there, because mortgage rates track the 10-year Treasury, guys. And if the Fed lowers their federal funds rate, we're likely to see the rates on the 10-year Treasury just go up, which means mortgage rates are going to go up. But, it's probably in a lot of their best interest to spin these crazy stories because they want people to be hopeful. They want people to get excited. Lower interest rates are good for other sectors of the economy when it comes to borrowing money for other things besides real estate. And businesses love cheap money. And because there is no cheap money anymore, that's one of the reasons so many businesses have been going under over the past couple of years. So even if it doesn't really help the housing market, what do they care? He's a billionaire, and it's not going to affect him either way. But low interest rates is good as a business owner. And don't forget, even if you do decide to jump in right now and become a homeowner, you are going to be facing lots of other expenses, guys, just like we talked about the other day. But one story that was sent to me out of Bristol, I don't know where Bristol is. This is somewhere in the United States. But people there just got a 6% increase in their property tax bill. And over the past 4 years in Bristol, property taxes have actually gone up 27%. Think about that, 27% increase in 4 years. Needless to say, people that live in Bristol are pretty outraged by this and are upset and even concerned about how they're going to pay for this. They've even been putting out lawn signs all across the town showing how much extra their property taxes have gone up due to these increases, so that way everybody knows what's going on. Now, the news tries to spin this into a political story, Republicans versus Democrats, but the reality is both sides of the aisle propose these tax increases and do increase taxes. That's pretty evident with what we just saw happen with the big beautiful bill. Some people are even seeing a $1,300 rise in their property taxes, $1,500 increases like it's nothing. But if you're living on a fixed income or you're already having a hard time paying for things, how are you going to pay for that? And so a lot of people in town are blaming the mayor, and the mayor says that these increases were necessary because there's been a lack of state funding for special education. So all of this money basically is supposed to go towards the school district once again. And I've brought this up before, but I'll say it again. Why do you have to pay if you don't have any kids? What if you no longer have any kids? What if you're a senior citizen living on a fixed income? Why do you have to pay school taxes, right? These school taxes make up about half of your property tax bill in most areas across the country. And all of the homestead exemptions and things like that people receive in order to get a discount on their property taxes usually doesn't apply to the school portion of the tax. So no matter what, you get reamed because of the school taxes. And I just think people should know about this, because if you're going to believe this rhetoric about home prices hitting an all-time high and thinking that this is somehow means it's a good time to buy for you, or you're never going to be able to afford it, and you're already wondering how you're going to afford it now, That's a huge red flag that you shouldn't do it, guys. Believe me, these increases are not going away. People are going to continue paying more for property taxes as home prices increase, and people are going to continue paying higher insurance premiums as insurance companies rake in all-time high profits. Here's a perfect example right here. If you live in Illinois, State Farm, they just announced that you're going to see your homeowner's insurance premiums rise by 27% starting on August 15th of 2025. How about that? So a couple more weeks, 27% increase in homeowners insurance premiums. They say this increase is going to affect 1.5 million customers in Illinois. And in Illinois, State Farm is actually the largest homeowners insurance company. So a lot of people are going to get slammed with this. And Illinois just happens to be one of the most expensive states for property taxes, only right behind New Jersey and Texas, I believe. And of course, they blame more extreme weather and rising repair costs due to inflation as the reason for the rate hike. Man, isn't that the reason that they always use now? But they're posting record profits. Can't let any of that disappear. That's not going to happen. State Farm is claiming that they have lost money in 13 of the past 15 years in Illinois due to covering costs from the severe weather. And last year, they paid out more than $638 million in hail damage in Illinois alone, which comes in only behind the state of Texas for hail damage. But you know, I'm getting so tired of hearing about these excuses from these insurance companies of why the premiums need to continue going up as they sit there and post record profits and just rub it all in our faces. You know, when are people going to like stand up and say, you know what, I'm tired of the property taxes, I'm tired of the homeowners insurance? When are entire neighborhoods or entire cities or towns going to say, we're all not going to pay anymore? What are you going to do about it? You're going to foreclose on all of us? I don't think so. And on top of that, they're not just doing the 27% increase, they're also forcing all policies to have a 1% deductible for wind and hail damage, which adds to the financial burden that homeowners are going to have to pick up from this increase. And Illinois just happens to be one of those states that doesn't have any state regulators to control how much insurance companies can raise their premiums. Like California here and in Florida where I live, they have to get approval from regulators in order to actually get the increase. Now, most of the time they get it anyway, so these guys are in bed with each other. But at least there are some checks and balances. Versus over there, they can just do whatever they want. And another reason, like I was saying earlier about the interest rates and why these billionaires and big real estate guys really want interest rates to come down is because of things like this. The Big Pink building in Portland, Oregon, I talked about this place about a month ago, just sold for a big, big discount. They just bought this building for $45 million, and it last sold in 2015, just 10 years ago, for $372 million. This building has a vacancy rate of about 60%, and the big company Digital Trends recently removed their business from the premises, and they were the biggest leaseholder at this property because of all the crime and the drugs and the homelessness that's happening over there. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because when you lower interest rates, it also makes it cheaper for these big billionaires and businessmen to go in and buy these buildings at even bigger discounts, because not only are they getting a discount on the price, but they can get a discount on the financing too. So they could care less about the residential housing market. They just spin off all these ideas to get the public excited that somehow this is going to work in their favor. So that way people pressure their local politicians and the federal government to make sure that's what happens. So if I were you, I really wouldn't be getting too excited about seeing interest rates drop for mortgages, guys, because all that's going to do is make affordability worse in the long run. Even if it makes things easier temporarily, it's going to be just that, temporary. And if you're a billionaire, you could probably care less if the average Joe can actually afford to buy a house or not. You just want what's best for all of your companies, your shareholders, and your next business venture. So I hope this really opened up your eyes and helped you understand why we're in this situation right now where home sales are at 30-year lows, but home prices are at an all-time high. It's actually a very easy situation to understand, and I hope it opened your eyes a little bit to what's going on. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.